So this is a workshop about scaling with predictable processes. For those of you that have been to my previous workshops, you know it is going to be interactive. There is going to be time for questions as we go along. And if you have any questions, please put them on the chat. If it's a question that I can be interrupted and asked right away, that's great. If not, we'll do it at the end. So we'll go for about 45 minutes, and I'm going to leave plenty of time for Q&A. Start thinking about questions that you have in your business that are relevant, specific scenarios, and I would be happy to go over that. As Pawi introduced me, my name is Adi. I'm a process consultant. I'm an industrial engineer. I've been dealing with processes and process improvement, process documentation, implementation for 3 decades now. I have a lot of experience working with many businesses, and my team and I probably combined seen thousands of businesses that we worked with. So this is my contact information. And if you have also questions after the workshop, feel free to email me or call me or text me at that number. My objective today is that you walk out of this workshop with at least one new thing that you can implement to improve the organization in your business and understand processes and procedures better, and take that action and apply it to your business. We're going to talk about the problem, we're going to talk about the solution, and we're going to leave time for Q&A so you can ask questions about what is applicable to you and your business. All right, so the problem with growth. Growth without systems create friction. I'm sure you all experience that. Put in the chat if you try to grow your business, but because you didn't have systems in place, you felt chaos or you felt friction or you felt like it wasn't working for you. So I'd like to make it interactive so you get to also let me know if this is something that you have experienced at all in terms of you try to grow the business, you add people, you don't have processes in place, people don't know what they're doing, or you have to train each one of them individually. One person does it one way, another person does it another way. So who can relate to that? If you do, put yes in the chat. All right. So you are familiar with that. That's right. Exactly. You have experienced that. And that is something that is very common to business owners. So when you grow and you don't have systems in place, you get inconsistent results. One of the things that I ask business owners, our clients, is like, why do you want to document your processes and procedures? And the number one answer is because I want consistency. I want everything to be the same. And it doesn't mean that it will stifle your creativity or now you are being robots doing everything the same way. No, it means that you're going to get consistent results, because if you don't, it strains teams. So think of an example of how not getting consistent results in your business is actually it's a strain on your teams. I can tell you that for us internally, we document processes and procedures. We have processes documented. When we have a process that is not documented, it creates strain on the teams because one person does it one way, it wasn't communicated, another person is questioning it, then we have to have a meeting about it, and then it creates all that internal turmoil that is really unnecessary. Owners become the bottleneck. All right, you see the funnel here, and we're trying to get things through the funnel. If you are the owner or you work with an owner, you can see that when you are the bottleneck, because all the decisions have to go through you. Maybe you are the only one who has the knowledge. So people come to you and ask you all those questions, and they can't proceed until you answer the questions. An example from my own business, we started to grow and scale when I removed myself as the bottleneck. My staff was waiting for me to make decisions, and they would send me a communication, but I was so overloaded, I wasn't able to get to it for 5 days. And then things just became more and more stagnant, and I was the bottleneck. So we will talk about how to remove yourself as the bottleneck. But that is really the problem with growth. Growing is great. That's a problem that all of us want to have. But when you don't have systems, you can get people into your business, meaning leads and traffic start flowing in, but then it creates a confusion to a degree that you go, oh, I don't want any more clients or any more patients or any more customers because I can't deal with it. And that's what we're going to address today. What predictable process actually mean? What does it mean, predictable process? Does it mean that now you don't have the freedom to create? No. Does it mean that now everyone is not going to think? No. That is not what it means. It means that you're going to have clearly defined steps so then people can repeat it, create predictable, consistent results, and it will leave them time to create and to think and to improve and do better. You're going to have repeatable outcomes. Success replicated is one of the things that people want. They want to replicate their success. Think about a time when you did something really well and you go like, wow, that was great. Now, did you ever have the thought immediately after that, I did really well, but can I actually do it again? And that is what we are addressing. With predictable processes, you can do it over and over and over again and get repeatable outcomes. Known owners. When you have predictable processes, you will know who does what, and they will know as well. Many times we go into businesses and we ask, okay, so who's responsible for that process? I guess Maggie is. What is Maggie's position? We are not sure. She wears 10 hats, not sure which hat she is doing it from. So what we do is we start separating, okay, that particular process is being done by Maggie, who is wearing that hat. So that hat is responsible for that process. And you can measure results. Yesterday, I met with a very successful entrepreneur, and she asked me, well, how do I know that the processes are actually being implemented? I said, the easiest way to do that is by looking at the KPIs that you assign for each process. So for instance, if you're a contractor and let's say a remodeler, and you go to people's homes and you remodel their homes, or your team does, how would you know the processes that you have are successful? Where you're going to complete the project on time to full satisfaction within the profit you expected or even more. If you get that every single time, then your processes are fine. If you don't get that, that is where, when you look at the clearly defined steps, you identify where the process is broken, look at the leading indicators that measure that particular step, correct those with the correct process, measure the results so you can get the final results all measured and correct and in the right scalability and the right viability for the business, that you are actually creating in enough volume so you can be profitable, and also enough quality so you can be profitable. So that is what predictable processes actually mean. Now, I'm not here to convince anyone. I want you to internalize it and think of examples in your business where, let's say, for instance, you have a process that you do not know if it actually works because you are not measuring it. If you have an example and want to share in the chat, go ahead. That's also a good accountability step of like, yeah, my sales process, I'm not measuring it. I measure just the outcome of how many we are closing, but we are not measuring each lead campaign. That's not a predictable process. It's not consistent. That is not a predictable process. We don't have accountability. You get the point. But think about actual examples, because this is going to be as good as you are thinking about your own examples. So does not having processes actually cost you money? It does, and it costs you a lot of money. One of the things that I have our clients do is to quantify what is the cost of not having a process. So then we can decide which processes we have to document first in order to get the return on investment. Because we look at process documentation as an investment, not an expense. Whether you use us and or another external company and you pay, that's an investment. But also internally, if you're doing it yourself, you're investing time. And sometimes it looks like very valuable time, but it does have a hidden cost by not doing it. So that will also be the internal return on investment for you. Rework and errors. Count how many rework and errors are being done. What does that mean to you? Meaning, how much do you actually spend in internal meeting in order to do that? How much do you have to then give to your customers because there were errors? That is a cost. Delays and missed handoffs. Here's an example. We were working with an HVAC company, air conditioning and heating. The salespeople were great. They were with the company for years and they were selling really well. Now, what happened, the handoff was missed to installation, to scheduling and installation. When that happens, no matter how well you sell, the clients will cancel the contract because if nobody shows up in their home, it's going to be a problem. And not only the cost of losing that deal, what about the cost of your reputation, of how many people they told that story, that frustrating story? That is lack of process, because processes also deal with the handoff from one department to another. Owner dependency. How many of you feel that there are processes in your own company that depend on you? No matter how much you say, yes, I delegate, I do this, I do that, it's still, there are things that are depending on you. I know it for myself. Although I delegated a lot of the processes and I have an amazing team, there are still things that I find that are dependent on me. And I have to delegate it and shut it off, give it to others. But it also can have owner, not just owner of the company. You might have an office manager and he or she are the only ones they know how to do a certain things. Well, that's owner dependency. And that's a cost, because if that person, something happens to that person, you're not going to be able to recoup. I mean, you're going to lose money. It's basically, you're not going to be able to produce. You'll have to cancel customers, clients, whatever it is. That's the hidden cost of the owner dependency. And burnout. You know, have you ever had the feeling, I don't want to do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. This is just too much. I already work 12 hours in a day and I cannot seem to stay ahead. That is burnout. And again, it's not burnout just for you. It's also burnout for your key employees. And for myself, this is the thing that I am concerned the most. I don't want my people to burn out, because that effect will even be bigger, because then I won't have my person that is in charge of that particular process there. And guess who will have to step in and do it? That would be me. So all of that is the hidden cost of no processes. And if you do this exercise of taking each one and actually put a dollar amount to it, you will see how problematic that is. All right, so now let's talk about the solution. What are we going to do about it? So the first thing is we're going to document your core processes. That's the first thing that you need to do. I mean, either we document or you document, but document your core processes. So where do I start? That's the question that I always been asked. You start with the process that drive the most results. If you did the exercise in the last slide of calculating the hidden cost, like how much does it cost you not to have that process, then you will know where to start. The question is always which area of the business, if you had well-documented processes and procedures, will get you the biggest return on investment. So I want you to reflect right now on your business and put in the chat, what area is that? So look at your business as it is right now, and let me know in the chat what area of the business, if you had well-documented processes and procedures, will get you the biggest return on investment. Operations, so sales. So those areas, that's what comes up a lot. Some people, like, for instance, we start working with a client and he told us HR. Why HR? Because he just let go of an HR person that has been with him for a long time without any knowledge transfer. He hired somebody new that she didn't know what she was doing. And at the same time, the business was growing and scaling and getting to a whole new level. And they need to hire, so they needed HR. That is where he was losing the majority of the money. So that's why he started with documenting his HR processes. So again, ask yourself, what area of the business, if I had well-documented processes and procedures, will get me the biggest return on investment? All right, so document what is happening now. That is a question that I'm getting asked a lot. Should I document future state or should I document existing state? Always start with documenting existing state, because if you don't, you won't know what to change, where to change, you won't be able to monitor it, and you won't be able to compare it to future state and create future state. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to spend a lot of time documenting existing state to a great extent if you know it doesn't work and you have to change it. So that's a whole different situation. If things are not working, you see it by measuring that, let's say, for instance, it's your lead generation process and you're not getting leads consistently and it's a problem. Well, let's see what you're doing high level, so then we can improve upon it. But if you have a process that is working very well, you have to really think for yourself why you want to change it. Maybe there is new technology. Maybe you want to make it more profitable. Totally fine. But definitely know how it is being done today so you don't lose that knowledge. And then be very careful about creating the changes, documenting the changes, and seeing what is the effect. And that is change management 101. Aim for clarity, not perfection. You want to make sure that people can understand what you said. So nowadays, use videos, use AI to create videos. We ask our clients for scripts and for how they do different things. And then we create videos using AI to explain it because people want to listen to it. And maybe it's not perfect. It's okay. You have to allow yourself not to be perfect. Maybe like 70% is okay. It's accurate. Obviously, it has to be accurate. You don't want to give people false data and false information, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So if the bullet point is not exactly aligned, it's okay, let it go. It's a matter of getting it out there so you get profitable or you get more profitable, and then you can afford hiring people that can align all your bullet points and write everything perfectly and the fonts all aligned, etc. Or even run it through AI to make it look beautiful. Don't waste your time on it. Now, just aim for clarity so you actually have your core processes documented. Now I'm going to go over frequently asked questions that people ask me about process documentation. So the first one is, should I document even if my processes are constantly changing? That is a question that I get a lot. And he said the same thing that I say. Absolutely. Yes, even if your processes are constantly changing, you gotta document what exists right now. Now, here's the misconception. Processes are probably not constantly changing. Although it feels that way, there might be things that are constant, and those are the ones that we need to find out. So if you feel you are in a flux, that you are creating new processes, well, I just implemented a new CRM and things are going to change. Well, the core processes should not change because of technology. Technology is a vehicle to execute the process. The process itself should remain the same. And moreover, you might have things with the whole system that really worked really well. And if you're actually going to change without documenting those, you might hurt yourself because you're going to lose the things that are so valuable to the operation of your business. Should I still document? Same answer. Absolutely. Otherwise, how would you know that the change is correct? And also, changing systems and software takes time. Nothing happens overnight. Even if you're being promised, oh, it will only take 3 months, it's kind of like remodeling your kitchen. It never takes that. It's always more. So in the meanwhile, you don't want your operations to shut down. You don't want to create confusion, because that's what happens. When there is change, there is also this sense of confusion and instability. So therefore, documenting what is very important. So it grounds people. It gets them to see, oh, yes, I can continue working methodically and get things done. And then I can compare what I have to what I implemented and make sure that nothing got lost. The next question is, why document the existing state if I want to improve it? Well, if you want to improve it, you got to have some baseline. You have to have what is now. So then you can very scientifically, meaning you're going to experiment. That's what scientifically means. That is that you observe and you experiment, you get results, and then will predict similar results in the future. So if you have your existing state documented, you're able to look where the bottlenecks are, and we're going to discuss that very soon. You are going to be able to then apply one change at a time, because if you're going to apply 10 changes at the same time, you're not going to know what actually created the change. Maybe one of them created a change of 10x of where you're at right now. One of them detracted by 5x. So now you see a change of 5x, but you could have achieved a change of 10x by knowing that this particular action is detracting. This one is actually the one who is successful, and then take the one that was successful and then multiply that one. So, it takes a lot of data keeping and record keeping and analyzing. And luckily today with AI tools, the analysis is much easier, but that's what it takes in order for you to see and to understand how to change, and doing methodically so it doesn't lead to burnout, because that also can lead to frustration and burnout. You change something and now you lost some customers and it's not what it used to be, and now you're thoroughly confused because you have no idea what you changed and what was the effect. And the other question is about AI. Can AI do it for me? Can I implement AI without documentation? Do I really need to document if I want to use AI? The answer is absolutely yes. I wrote several articles that got published in Inc.com and Forbes Council, and it's on my website if you'd like to read those. But it is the importance of having good SOPs, standards operating procedures, before you can create AI agents. The reason why is because the AI agents, just like humans, have to be trained on something, or even more than humans, because humans can also figure out, and the AI can ask you a question as well, but humans have the ability to observe also around, but the AI is what you feed the artificial intelligence. So when you want to have AI automate, improve, by all means, and we do it all the time, but you gotta document your processes and then identify the areas where it will give you the biggest ROI. And I hope by now you realize that I look at processes as ROIs, return on investment, because unless you have unlimited funds and you can automate everything, automation costs money. You probably need to hire a consultant that will come and do it and assess it and then maintain it, or you will have to pay for a course to do it, or whatever it is. You won't be able to automate every single thing, and there will be things throughout the process that they might save you 5 minutes, and there will be another one that might save you an hour. So which one would you choose? Now, there might be one that might take you an hour, but once every 3 months, and then there can be one that will save 5 minutes every day. Which one will you choose? How would you know that if you cannot look at a map of your processes? So therefore, it's very important to document. Now, optimize, that's the second step. So we have document, the second one is optimize. So turn bottlenecks into scalable systems. That's what optimize is that you take something that is not working and you make it work. So the first thing that you need to know is that bottlenecks reveal system weaknesses. Wherever there is a bottleneck, the system can collapse if you overload it. If you are the bottleneck and you need to make a decision before a staff member can move on with the process, maybe it's working right now, but if you 5x your number of customers, now you have 5 decisions to make, and you will not be able to do that. And that is where the system is going to collapse. And that is where you want to identify it ahead of time so that does not happen. The second thing is fix the process, not the person. Now, of course, we can talk about culture, but that's not what we're talking about. I assume right here that you have been working with the profit recipe on your culture, that you know that you have the right people in the right seats, and you recognize when not, and you fix that. Now, sometimes you think you don't have the right person in the right seat, but in truth, they might not have been trained or the process is not fixed. So I'll say fix the process and then see how the person performs. So that is another thing in terms of optimizing, because it might be that the process is set for failure and not set for success. And why change? So that is a key component. I already talked about it a little bit when I was mentioning the change management and what we document. Right here, you turn bottlenecks into scalable systems. You have to be 100% convinced of why you want to change. You have to see that that bottleneck is really creating problems for you. You have to make sure that you know what the return on investment is going to be. How much money will it actually save you? How much money you're going to stop bleeding or losing? That is very important. And you have to have that why for the change before you implement change and before you optimize. So here's the next point. How do you identify bottlenecks? So first of all, you have to look at where work slows down. You ask yourself, where do you have to stop? Where can you work in a flow and then the flow just cuts down, just slows down? You can continue. It can slow down because you have to wait for a decision. It slows down because you don't have the materials that you need around you, which should have been, that's part of the process. You should have gotten those materials, right? Let's say you are installing an air conditioning unit. You're installing an air conditioning unit, but you don't have the tools, or you don't have the unit, and you have to wait for it because it wasn't ordered on time. You're painting a house, you don't have the equipment because the person didn't show up on time because they didn't know that they have to arrive and the process was all messed up. This is where work slows down. It might be that you are writing a report, but you don't have all the information. There wasn't a step in the process to provide that information. Work slows down at that point. As I'm giving those examples, please think about examples from your own business where work slows down for you or for others. That is a bottleneck. Where approvals pile up, you have to go up to your boss, to your senior, and ask for approvals every single time, and they are not ready to do that, and they only show up for 2 hours in the morning, and then they're out in the field, then what will happen? You have this really small window, and then you have to wait for the next day. It might be approval from customers as well. That's a bottleneck. A contract, and you have to wait for the contract to be signed, and the clients procrastinate or don't look at it. Well, that's a bottleneck. So either you get on the call and you get them to the customers to sign right there. You use an electronic signing software like DocuSign so they don't have to download, figure out how to sign it and upload it again. All of that can be solved, but you have to identify it as a bottleneck. Where the owner steps in, that's a bottleneck because, again, we have to wait for the owner's approval. We don't have a policy in writing. We don't have a procedure in writing. We don't know how we do it. It hasn't been established. Now we have to wait for the owner. And where mistakes repeat, where do those mistakes happen over and over and over? That's a bottleneck. Maybe it is measurements. Maybe you have a window company and the person comes back with wrong measurements, and then they have to be sent again. And then maybe windows were ordered based on wrong measurements. That's a problem. Maybe you have a bookkeeping company and somebody keeps making mistakes on the reconciliation. That's a problem. That's a bottleneck because work has to be repeated and it can get out to the client. So it's very important to identify those bottlenecks. Now, bottlenecks, are the bottlenecks bad? It's all a matter of opinion. I mean, of course they're bad. You don't want to have bottlenecks, but can they be used in order to create better systems? And that is the solution-oriented individual, is the one that will look at it. Let's turn those bottlenecks into workable systems so the flow will open, and then I can increase my clients, my patients, my customers, increase the production, increase the deliverables. So always look at it as an opportunity. So the first step to do that is to define the desired outcome. That's the first thing to do. So we have a bottleneck here. Let's say, for instance, there are many errors. Let's take the window company. We work also with professional services, with manufacturing, healthcare, construction, etc. But I like to give examples from construction. You have a window you have to install. You send a measurement tech to the job site, they measure it incorrectly, and they come back, and now it's being ordered incorrectly, and then they can't install it, and the customer is all upset. So what is the desired outcome? The desired outcome is that the measurements are being done correctly every single time, that then the order is correct, arrives on time, get installed, windows are perfect, customer is very excited about it, gives a review and a referral, and then also asks you to do other projects around the house. That's the desired outcome. All right, so what are the unnecessary steps that do not lead to that particular result? And that's what you have to identify, so you can remove those unnecessary steps. And then you delegate or automate intentionally. So from all those steps, like the unnecessary step is obviously the going back and forth. So somewhere along the line, we have to have quality control. Now we can automate it. There are many instruments nowadays that can measure electronically. So how do you measure? Maybe there was also not enough training of the measure tech. So you train them to measure correctly. Then in terms of maybe there are some slows in terms of creating the estimate. How do we delegate it? Maybe we outsource it to somebody that is their role. The single role is to create all those estimates, and they can create it very fast and you get them, or you automate it, or you use some kind of AI, or a combination of both. But that is where you become creative. But you become creative by identifying the bottlenecks and opening them. Now, of course, you can also be creative by having a bright idea, but again, you have to define for yourself why you're changing. So if you are doing a thing that is very successful right now, then you can define the desired outcome. Say, great, right now we are able to create processes and procedures, let's say for 10 clients, one writer, 10 clients. They're doing a great job. I know what they're doing. I want to double the production. I want them to actually get processes and procedures for 20 clients. Okay, good. Why? Because that will increase the revenue by 2x. And it will also, but I want to also maintain profitability, and I want to make sure that I don't have to invest too much in it. That's a desired outcome. So the unnecessary steps that are not going to lead me to that, or some manual steps that then I can automate, and then see how close I can approach the 20 clients without compromising on quality. So that is an example right there. All right, so the third step, so we talked about document, optimize, now it's implement. And that is the step that is very important that you cannot do without. And I tell my clients, and I tell entrepreneurs that I talk to, is don't even bother documenting if you're not going to implement. Because what's the point? You don't want to have just something written somewhere when you're actually not using it. So implementation, that means align the team around accountability and execution. So this is what you do, is you first of all have to have a process owner. Each process should have an owner. Decide who is accountable, which will be the owner, the responsible, which is the person who is actually executing it, consultant. This is the RC chart, right? The accountable, responsible, consulted. Like, let's say somebody comes to me and they have a question about the client. So we consult and we come up with a solution. That's consultative. Informed, An example of an informed is, let's say the owner of the financial services company needs to be informed on what was done throughout the week so they know that things are moving along and things are going well. It's totally fine. Accountable is the owner of the process. That's where the buck ends. This is the person that has to be able to speak up about the process, why it was done, why it was not done. If something happens, they are the ones who will basically have the accountability. So every process needs an owner. There cannot be a process without an owner because things don't get done. Clear handoffs reduce friction. So that's very important that we also understand the clear handoff between processes. So if we have, for instance, the sales department and the installation department, we have to have clear handoff. Friction is part of the blocks to growth because of not having clear handoff. So that's very important. And that's where processes tend to break. Accountability creates consistency. Why is that? If you have an owner, they're going to do it over and over again. That person will also be able to observe and see what works and what doesn't work and improve upon the processes. They will take ownership. The pride of ownership is something that is very, very important because people want to do well. They want to win. They want to be successful. And accountability creates that. Now, how do we implement? So we align the team around accountability and execution. So in order to make the process stick, the first thing is to train. We got to train the people on the processes. That is a key component. I get that question all the time. Go, Adi, I documented my processes, but they're not being followed. Do you know what my first question is? My first question is, did the people read the processes? Well, I think so. I'm not sure. So I can tell you that when we roll those processes out, the first thing that we do is we ensure that every individual reads their processes. Now, how can I be sure? I'm being asked that question. So if I'm being asked that question, there is something wrong with your culture because you already don't have a culture of accountability. If you tell your people to read something and you allocate the time, enough time for them to read it, and then we also give them a survey or a quiz, but you're not sure if they actually did it, then we have a cultural problem here, which we can also fix. And we address that because we want to create a process-driven culture, among other things. And it always starts from the top, and it starts with the mindset, and it starts with asking the why and figuring out the why for each individual and working with them, which we do. But you got to assume that you have a good culture. So if you are actually going to explain to your people why it is so important, why are we applying this? This is also one of the 6 components of EOS. And if you have your leadership team on board, then you roll it out, you give enough time with a due date for everyone to read it, do the quizzes, ask questions. So that's the first thing you got to train. The second thing is you have to use the processes daily. It's not enough to do it to just read it one time and train your new employees. I'm not talking about training of new employees. Everyone in the company, when you roll it out, has to know it, because otherwise, if you only use it with new people, the existing people won't know what processes exist and they're not going to be able to collaborate. So definitely everyone needs to know that. But the processes have to be done on a day-to-day basis. And I do have an entire workshop that I did both in person and online. So you can go ahead and ask me for it, and I'll send you the recording of how to get your processes followed by all. And there is a whole chapter there, a whole section that I'm talking about how to make sure that you use it in day-to-day management. When you solve issues, when you're IDSing, when you are discussing and solving, you gotta use processes. If there is an issue, let's say, for instance, there was an issue yesterday, we lost a customer because the technician was late for the job. Okay, why were they late for the job? Well, because the van was not ready. All right, where's the process on loading the van? Open the process. I highly recommend all of them are on the computer in a process documentation system. You open it, you look at it, you go, okay, this is the process right here of loading the van. Was it followed? That's the first question I would ask. No. Why not? because I was in a rush. Okay, this is the problem right there. So you don't have to discuss it more. All it is like in the morning, okay, so the solution is that we're going to print that checklist or have a QR code for the checklist, and every morning you have to do it. But let's say, for instance, yes, I did follow the procedure, but there was something missing and I have to stop in Home Depot and buy it. All right, well, that's a problem in the procedure, because you should actually do it the night before and make sure that everything is there before you go home for the day. So that's a solution. We implemented something into the process, and now we're going to change the process and include that. There are many examples of how to use it, the processes in day-to-day operations. A lot of it has to do also with measuring. You have your scorecard. If the scorecard is down, okay, what was not followed with the process? Because if the process is correct and is being followed, it should have resulted in results that you can measure. So you always can go back and look and investigate and see what happened, but you're not going blind. And your team, your people will see that, and they will start doing the same thing again, and things will become much, much simpler. Review regularly. That is a key. You got to review your processes regularly. It's not a one and done. It's a living, breathing document. And we have a whole checklist. And again, if you would like one, if you are at that stage and you would like a checklist on how to review your processes, let me know, email me, and I'll be happy to provide it. Review is, or change of processes is driven by two things: event-driven and time-driven. Event-driven meaning you bought a new software, you have to align some of the processes. You created a new position, you got to create processes for that position. That's event-driven. Time-driven is that you have to set up a time regularly, every 6 months, once a year, to review all of your processes and to make sure that any changes were done and were documented and they are there, and then roll it out to the team again. Event-driven can also be handling one of the issues. If you have an issue that came up and then you notice that that procedure is not up to date, then revise that procedure. How often should I review my processes? Well, you review your processes depending on the maturity of the processes. So if you have a process that is new, I will review it once a month, sometimes even weekly, depends on the process, until you iterate several times and until you are convinced that now it's working as measured by the metrics or KPIs. If you have a process that you've been doing for years and it's working, once a year is fine, maybe every 6 months. I would suggest coordinate it with your quarterly reviews. When you do your quarterly meetings, let's say you have 8 core processes, so every quarter review 2. If you want to do it more often, then every quarter review 4. And then alternate, so you review everything. And we talked about that, measure adherence and outcomes. This is so important, because if you drill this, if you put that into your routine, if you make it into a habit, things will change tremendously, because you always look at, okay, where are we at? What have we done? What are the results? We're getting results. Great. Our processes are great. We're not getting the results that we would like. Either results are not gotten or they're not in the right amount, in a viable amount. Great. What can we do? How we can make our processes more streamlined, how we can make our processes more effective so we can actually accomplish more. So what predictable processes enable? Consistent results, confident delegation. Everything is on your shoulder, or a lot of things are on your shoulder. Why are you not delegating? Because you don't feel confident that you are going to get the results. Why? Maybe there are no processes. Faster onboarding, for sure, because you now can train your new hires on how to do things your way. Scalable growth. So growth is not going to be something that you guess at, but it's actually going to be scalable and done correctly. So start this week. Choose one core process. Again, the question is, which one will get you the biggest ROI? document the current state, assign ownership, test, and refine. And let me know how it goes. I definitely would love to hear from you. And now I'll leave some time for questions and answers. And if you want to get a hold of me, again, this is my information. If you'd like any of the things that I mentioned, if you'd like the workshop that I did, followed by all the 8 steps rollout, if you'd like the checklist for the process review, please email me and I will make sure to send it to you. So thank you again for attending.